Murad, where are you? Oh, there you are. Let's hear from you.
Good evening, Fiona. Good evening, the panel. My question is the honeymoon period already over for the PM and the Labour Party?
Right. Now, Nick, obviously you will want to put your 10 penneth in here. I'm actually going to go around everybody and just get a feel of the room and then come back to you. Mirza, since you asked this question, what's your feeling?
Yes, I do. I think it's already over. They've not been transparent with the general public. I'm a Labour supporter. I've always supported Labour, always voted Labour. But I'm very disappointed. If there was a general election tomorrow, I wouldn't vote Labour. All my family have always voted Labour. But like I said, they've not been transparent. All these things, they keep blaming the previous government. It's just not good enough. Really isn't.
Wow. And you're saying that as a Labour supporter, okay? You're definitely not a Labour supporter, Nadine. Let's hear your view.
No, but it must be pretty painful for Nick and Keir to hear that. I have to say that I've been in this position myself with my party, and when Nick was in opposition, they took advantage of the opportunity to attack Boris over wallpaper or other parties.
It wasn't just Labour attacking over parties, I might say. We had a lot from our audience about that as well.
I don't disagree. I just think what I worry about slightly, Mazar, is that, and I delivered the vaccine programme with some amazing civil servants and some amazing politicians from across the political divide. Sadiq Khan, Labour, Andy Burnham, Andy Street, Conservative, Scottish Government, Welsh Labour Government. And when we work together, we get some really good things done. And we have some outstanding civil servants. My fear for our politics as a whole, and Fiona said it in the bit that wasn't recorded earlier, that I am now retired from mainstream politics, is I think a lot of my friends will not want to go into politics because of the level of sort of vitriol over mistakes. I've just written a book, and one of the themes of the book is there are no superhumans.
Oh my God, we've only been on air 15 minutes and you mentioned it already.
I know.
That has to be something of a record, Nadine.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But my point was going to be, one was to demystify politics, to encourage more people from all sorts of backgrounds to enter politics, but also to say that there are no superhumans in politics. People make mistakes, and sometimes...
So cut Keir Starmer some slack, is that what you're saying?
I just think the focus should be on delivery for the country. I suspect, if I put my polling hat on, it's early enough in Keir's time in office for him to recover from this, but this is a pretty bad blow for him.
Okay. I have to say...
I think you're right on that.
You never sounded like this when you came on Question Time when you were in office. I mean, it's a very, very different Nadine to how we're talking now. Zia?
I think Keir Starmer's honeymoon clearly is over. I think that's abundantly clear. This is a man who presented himself as Mr. Rules, presented the Labour Party as going to bring integrity back to politics. It's interesting, we're sitting here 3 months into a Labour government, having won a general election on the promise that they were going to bring change, and their slogan at their conference was "Change Begins." We're sitting here on Question Time. We're going to be talking about sleaze. We're going to be talking about hypocrisy. We're going to be talking about one rule for the Prime Minister, one for everybody else. And it's not a surprise, Nadeem, that you're somewhat defending it and making comparisons with Boris, because that's exactly what got Boris into trouble. It was unacceptable then. It's totally unacceptable now. What's happened with Lord Ali, where, for some reason the Prime Minister saw fit for him to be purchasing his wife designer clothes, £4,500 glasses. I have no idea why anyone needs £4,500 spectacles, and then issuing him a Downing Street pass. And by the way, there is now news just hitting the wires a few hours ago that potentially, the Prime Minister has breached electoral law by misstating where his residence was. And I actually had a question.
And what are you referring to exactly? Are you referring to the video that he made during the pandemic when
he had
Lord Ali's apartment?
He had represented the Electoral Commission that his primary residence was in Holborn. And then he gave an interview recently when he was talking about moving to Lord Ali's apartment, apparently because his son needed time to...
Just temporarily.
Well, but if you spend time there overnight...
Primary residence.
If you spend time overnight, potentially, there is a case to be made that he has breached electoral law. My question is, if that is...
I'm not saying Lord Ali was a mate, but if he even stated with a relative overnight. You suggesting he might have breached electoral law?
That's not what's been alleged in this coverage. And my question to Nick is, if that is the case, if it is the case that Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, has breached electoral law, would you call on him to resign?
He hasn't. It's not a primary residence, is it? By any stretch of the imagination.
Well, we're about to find out. But answer the question. Will you call on him to resign if he breached electoral law?
Will you actually go back, look at the law and what a primary residence means rather than make the accusation?
Okay, let me come around, because I have to say, this is not something that's filtered down to me. I'm going to come around all of you in a minute, so get your hands up, those who want to talk about Carla.
Thank you. Returning to your point, Mazar, I hear you absolutely, and I think there's a lot of people in this country feeling similar to yourself. Labour were elected on a mandate of change, but now they're in power. When push comes to shove, their solutions to the problems we're facing in this country are to let the most vulnerable in our country, to let children in poverty, to let pensioners who are struggling to pay their fuel bills suffer. And they talk about needing to be honest. Well, I think they do need to be honest, but not in the way they're doing currently of saying it's going to get worse before it gets better, but in the way of acknowledging that we live in one of the richest countries in the world. The money is there in the economy. We currently have a tax system that is specifically set up to favour the very richest in society. If we made some changes to the tax system to ensure those with the broader shoulders who can easily afford to pay a little bit extra pay a bit more through equalising capital gains with income tax and introducing a wealth tax on just the super rich, the multi-millionaires and above, we could raise tens of billions of pounds that could easily save the winter fuel tax, scrap the two-child benefit, scrap the bedroom tax, pay the nurses properly, and have money to spare.
Okay, right. Now, as you'd expect, those on the panel who are not from Labour are clearly going to say the honeymoon's over and it's all terrible. That's what we'd expect. You've been unusually magnanimous, you don't quite know what's going on there. But I'd really want to hear from you. So, this woman here in the front.
I don't believe Labour has actually had a honeymoon. They had to hit the road straight away. I believe that they've got a hard struggle ahead, and we need to give them a chance.
Okay. Man there in the black t-shirt.
I just want to say this is such a non-story, if I'm honest with you. With everything that's going on and everything like that, if you ever listen to stuff like you talk about how Keir Starmer is the problem and everything like that. Yeah, we've had 14 years of Tory sleaze and everything like that going on with. I'm not saying it's perfect and all, but there is more important things to go on about. If we're talking about Tory sleaze, we've got Boris Johnson, we've got, I'm not trying to point anything out, but even one of your panellists, there was a scandal going on with them.
Okay, well, let's just clear what that is up. So, Nadine, I will just say this briefly, and you can correct if I've got any facts wrong here, but also, Nadine, you had to leave government, you were sacked, after inquiry found that you failed to disclose while you were Chancellor that the Inland Revenue was investigating your tax affairs, and you paid nearly £5 million to settle that issue. That is what you're referring to, I assume. Okay, just so we've made that clear. Do you want to respond to that?
Only that you have to own your mistakes. What I was saying earlier, that there are no superhumans in politics, and there's a whole chapter in the book on...
Oh my God. You're going to have to leave the panel if you mention one more time. I'm serious. But, right, okay. The man here.
Well, I've been a lifelong Labour supporter as well, way back to the Neil Kinnock days. Yeah, I was so disappointed when they brought in the winter fuel payment to the pensioners. We're talking about pensioners who are on less than £13,000 a year before they lose it. Yeah, a single person benefit cap is almost £15,000 a year. At least start the cliff edge higher.
Right, okay. Let's just, I'm going to hear a couple more points very quickly. Yes, Amanda. Yes.
So the election was won on a manifesto of change. The honeymoon period, I think, is over because what's been introduced in that early start, you would think would be some big changes to emphasise the promises that were made. It feels very much like almost Conservative 2.0. Right. It's the same film but with different actors, and I'd suggest that the current actors aren't doing the job as well as the previous ones.
Can I ask you, did you vote Labour at the election?
I did not vote Labour, no.
You didn't? Okay. Woman there. Yes, in the colourful top, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what a lot of people have said. I think the honeymoon period is definitely over. I don't think a lot of people will forgive the Labour government for what they've done to the pensioners of this country, the most poorest and vulnerable people, to take away the fuel allowance from people that are earning £12,000 a year is mean and miserable, and I think people won't have a long memory. I actually believe this will be a one-term government, and Labour have shot themselves in the foot.
Right, Nick, so you've waited very patiently. I mean, I imagine for you, you were saying, give them a chance. But then you've got at least a couple of Labour voters here saying, we voted Labour, we've always voted Labour, we're really disappointed.
Well, look, first of all, we knew from opposition that if we were to be given the privilege of forming a government, that this was going to be an extraordinarily difficult inheritance. We frankly didn't know quite how difficult it was until we actually got into power. We found a £22 billion gap, not a future gap.
Stop it.
Not a future gap.
It's not true.
But a
Hang on, let him answer. I've let you also
Treasury won't release the details, Nick.
Come on.
Hang on, I've let you answer. Let Nick has sat here very
Nadine,
patiently. It's his turn
if
to answer.
Nadine doesn't want to take my word, he should take the Office for Budget Responsibility, the independent body that's doing a review into how the last government hid figures from them. Unless we stabilise the economy this year, in this financial year, actually fill that £22 billion black hole, we are taking risks with the economy, and we will be going back to the situation that we had when Nadine was in the government, so he knows it very, very well. When Liz Truss did exactly that, took a massive risk to the economy, and we saw the risk that produced to pensions, we saw the results that that had in mortgages, and this government will not do that, even if it means, as it does, taking difficult decisions. That is what we are doing, but we are doing it to stabilise the economy so we can fix the foundations and then build a better Britain. And people were challenging, saying, well, how is it different from the last government? In the 11 weeks we've been in power, planning reform, the foundation of GB Energy, railway nationalisation, National Wealth Fund, these are things that the last Conservative government never would have done. We've already done those things in 11 weeks. It's frankly more than they managed in the 11 years before.
So obviously we've seen the Labour conference. Conservative one's about to start. I remember the Labour conference from the year before, and there was a real feeling of it's probably coming your way, it's just around the corner, a real feeling of optimism and kind of vim in the room. And at this one, not everybody, of course, but quite a few people just feeling it was a bit kind of depressing.
Well, I didn't find that at all. I think I've been to enough party conferences in opposition. I can tell you the ones when you're in government are a lot better. But what I saw was a sense, firstly, of the scale of the challenge. I think people realise, and we're not hiding that, we've been very open about the scale of the challenge, but also a real determination at this conference to deliver. And I know, and I always listen to what people say, and I say to the gentleman at the back who asked the question, and what you were saying about if there were an election now. But what I say to people is, judge us on delivery. Judge us on what we deliver for the British people over the next 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question, Nick?
Briefly, because I want to move on.
I mean, credit where it's due. There are some things that your government is doing that I and the Greens support. Rail renationalisation, for example, GB Energy, I think those are really promising. But when you say that difficult decisions have to be made, why is it that your government seems to be repeatedly making decisions that are difficult for the poorest in society?
It's true, we've had to take the very difficult decision to means test the winter fuel allowance, but at the same time, Rachel Reeves has put more money into the household support fund to try and help people at the margins as best we can. And we are prioritising the poorest in society. We are taking action, like, for example, putting VAT on private school fees, which will come in January. We're extending the windfall tax on the oil and gas giants. We're dealing with the non-dom tax regime. So, of course, fairness is at the heart of what we're doing, and you see that again in the budget on the 30th of October.
Okay, let me move on. Take another question now from Tim Bevan.
What positive action has the Labour government taken to stop the small boat crossings as they approach 3 months since taking office?
Okay, well, Nick, this is also a question for you, but I will come back to you in a moment just to give everyone a bit of a shout. Zia.
Well, it's obvious that the first action that Labour took was to cancel the Rwanda programme, and as much as it was a boneheaded programme, given that the Conservative government paid for it up front, It was a deterrent, so Labour took away the deterrent for no apparent reason, and the proof of that, now it looks like Germany. Now it looks like
the Rwanda plan.
we weren't in favour of it, but once it's already in place and paid for upfront, £230 million of British taxpayer money paid for upfront, Keir Starmer cancels it on day one, removes the deterrent. And as a result of that, in the 80 days since Keir Starmer has taken power and has been in Downing Street, compare that to the last 80 days of the Conservative government, the number of people crossing the channel illegally has grown by 60%. Keir Starmer promised to smash the gangs. All he has done is smash his own credibility.
Okay, but let's just examine your policies. So are you saying Nigel Farage has been very critical of the Rwanda plan, says it's nonsense effectively. So on the one hand you're saying there shouldn't be the Rwanda plan, and now Labour have got rid of you saying you're criticising them as well. So you want it both ways.
Two things can be true at the same time. The Rwanda programme was boneheaded because there hasn't been the courage inside Westminster to cancel, to leave the European Court of Human Rights, replace it with the British Bill of Rights, which puts the rights of British people first. That's the first step. Then secondly, we need to say that anybody who comes to this country illegally cannot be granted asylum. So we actually understand how incentives work, which clearly Keir Starmer does not. If you do those things, the boats will stop coming very quickly, and that would also mean that we can pick up the boats as they come in, take them back to France, which, by the way, that has happened. You know, and Nigel Farage made this point during the general election and said our Royal Navy could take those boats back to France. He was roundly pilloried, essentially, by the left, claiming that, there was no way that could happen, the French Navy would get involved. Well, what happened? A few weeks ago, Border Force took a boat back to France, and it was accepted back. For some reason, presumably because it actually worked, that has stopped happening. So that is how
So what you're suggesting then is that, on the one hand, there shouldn't be the Rwanda plan, but there should be the Rwanda plan. And when it comes to boats, you're suggesting, but en masse, people that come over on small boats should be picked up and put on the shore in France. And you think France would accept that? You think France would accept that?
It's already happened. I don't think.
I'm not talking about a handful. I'm talking about en masse.
So you have to do all of those things at the same time. Firstly, you leave the European Convention of Human Rights, replace it with the British Bill of Rights. You utilise our Royal Navy. We spend £52 billion per year on defence. The notion that the United Kingdom cannot take back dinghies back to France is absurd.
And so you think the French government would accept that?
I think that would be a difficult conversation. If we're not going to have a difficult conversation with France about the sovereignty of this country and the security of our borders, then explain to me what on earth we would have a difficult conversation with France about.
All right, now, Nick, as I said, I'm going to come to you. So, Carla, the question is about stopping the small boat crossings. Now, in the Green Party website, you want to see a world without borders. So, presumably, you might not want people coming across the small boats because it's potentially fatal, but you're very happy to let anyone come who wants to come.
I'm really glad that Labour have scrapped the Rwanda scheme. It was incredibly expensive and incredibly cruel. Putting aside the sort of long-term goals of a world we'd like to see, which is what that particular line you're referring to is about.
Well, just explain what that is so we understand.
Well, what's in our manifesto is about...
Well, this is on the website, on the party website. The Green Party wants to see a world without borders. So what would that look like to everyone?
So that's more of about a long-term vision where there is more, where everyone has more freedom of movement, and where we're more welcoming, we have a more humane approach to immigration. But that's very much a different...
If there are no borders, that means anyone who wants to come could come.
But that's very different to the world we're in now. And as someone said...
It's on your website, so I presume you mean it.
Said, we've got to work from the situation we're in now. And so our approach, what we had in our manifesto and what we've been pushing the successive governments on, is about a more humane approach to immigration. And so I'm really glad to see that the Rwanda scheme's been scrapped, but I'm pretty worried to see Starmer visiting the far-right Italian Prime Minister to get tips on how to deal with immigration by intimidating asylum seekers out of seeking refuge from political oppression and violence. I think
from France. They're coming from France, which last I checked is a safe country.
It is a human right to seek asylum in the country of your choice, and it's a legacy of colonialism that there are many people across the country who have links to the UK, and so they have a right to claim asylum here. The UK takes actually a pretty small number of asylum seekers compared to many other countries.
We're a smaller country, per capita we take a lot more. Because we're a smaller country, per capita we take a lot more than France and Germany.
The vast majority of refugees are displaced within their own country or to the immediate neighbouring countries. I'm just saying that the UK should be taking its responsibility to support people fleeing war and oppression seriously.
Right.
And while I'm glad that the Rwanda scheme is gone, there is still an awful lot more that the UK could be doing. Chief amongst those would be ensuring that we allow safe and legal routes for those fleeing oppression and violence to apply for asylum from overseas, because that's the real way to tackle the issues with small boats. That's the real way to stop deaths in the Channel, is to give people those safe and legal routes to apply, acknowledging that the majority of people who travel by those routes are granted asylum. They are recognised as refugees, and the UK does eventually recognise its responsibility to support them. Let's not force them into the hands of traffickers to do that.
All right, let me come around here. Just to correct you, Jeff. France does take more per capita in terms of asylum seekers than we do. I think Germany might as well, but France takes more per capita. We are quite far down the list.
Can I just come in for a second?
No, let me just ask this woman here. I'll come back to you then. Yes.
Thank you, Fiona. I'm interested in Zia's comments about the Reform Party's attitude to asylum seekers, because obviously we all know that you have to be on UK soil to claim asylum
legally. Yeah.
So are we saying now that if Reform were in charge, there would be no asylum seeking in the UK?
No, I didn't say that. What we need is a coherent immigration policy rather than a shambolic one. We firstly need secure borders. If you don't have secure borders, then you have no control over the people coming and the number of people coming. That's the first point. The second point is we've had a massive explosion in the size of our population. And what we stand for is saying, first and foremost, the sworn duty of the British government is to put the interests of citizens of the United Kingdom ahead of citizens of other countries.
So in terms of the woman's question there, how could asylum seekers legally seek asylum in the UK?
Well, a sensible system could be created to do that, but frankly, far too many people have come here in a short period of time.
Any idea what it might be?
1.8 million. We've had, just like any country that has a sensible asylum regime, but because we have open borders,
okay, so
because we essentially have a soft touch welfare state, people are coming here from, as I said, from countries like France. I put it to you again. These are people who are coming here across the Channel. They're not coming from Syria and they're not coming from Gaza. They're coming from France. We should ask ourselves why that is.
Some of them are coming from Syria via France, of course, but I hear you were saying the last country they were in was France. Yes, the woman here in the cream jacket, a little bit further along. Yeah.
Hi, I'd just like to comment that it's rich coming from a very hypothetical position, which I feel the Reform Party is coming from. We've had Labour, we've had Conservative governments trying to sort out and actually reinforce our borders. So I have to apologise that I find your statements quite hypothetical. And to Fiona's point, what would be the policy? I didn't hear a strong policy from Reform to say what they would actually do. It sounds like criticism of what has been happening with the government in terms of trying to reinforce our borders. So what would Reform do that is so different from the Conservative and the Labour Party?
So firstly, clearly another representative BBC Question Time audience given Reform 1.
Okay, I'm just going to stop you there. Zia. We have a representative proportion of people in here who voted Reform. And now, I don't know if any of you want to put your hands up.
How many people
let's hear from one of them. We're going to get an answer to your question, but let's hear from...
3.
Well, no, it's not 3. I said who wants to put their hands up. That's a very different matter. One of you wanted to say something. Yeah, let's hear from you.
Just to say, really, I voted for Conservative most of my life and felt drastically let down by the Conservative government last time. There was no way on this earth I was going to vote for Keir Starmer, absolutely no way. And I think from what I was hearing from Reform was the only really viable option. It was the only person, Nigel Farage was the only person that I really thought knew what he was talking about and had the country at his heart and at the Reform Party's heart. And I don't believe much that anybody else has said. And I continue with the Labour guy, Nick, sorry, your name is. Since you've been in a couple of weeks, it's just been horrendous. It's one thing after another. And you can sit there all you like and try and defend taking money away from people who are on 13 grand a year. That's going to save you what, 1.2 billion? Did you say you had a 22 billion hole? Come on.
Now look, I know you put a question to Zia. Zia has talked an awful lot, so I need to get around the rest of the panel as well, but if I can, if I've got time, I'm going to come back to that. So Nick, the question is...
what has Labour done, I think?
Yes, to stop the small boats.
Right,
So just to put that in context, we have small boat arrivals are up 16% now on the same time last year, and of course I don't need to remind you, at least 45 people have died in the Channel this year.
Yeah, so let's just not forget that. And I, I shadowed the Home Affairs brief for a number of years. I've been down to Dover, I've been across to France, I've been to the French coast to see the work that's done there. I've talked to a number of the different European governments about this as well. What has Labour done in its first 11 weeks? Well, we've started setting up our Border Security Command. We've actually recruited the Border Security Commander, Martin Hewitt. And what that will do is bring together all the different agencies that have been involved in this but haven't been properly coordinated. So whether that is Border Force, whether that is Crown Prosecution Service International, whether that is the police, whether it is working more closely with European partners, including with Europol, because people do not become refugees in northern France. They've usually travelled thousands of miles, and that is why you have to work internationally to bust the model of the people smugglers.
And Martin Hewitt has also talked about deterrence being needed as part of the government strategy. Where do you see the deterrence in your strategy?
Well, first of all, let's just say the Rwanda scheme was an epic waste of money. It wasn't just £400 million, it was £700 million that was wasted on that scheme. Where is the deterrence? Deterrence comes from a working asylum system here in the UK that can actually give decisions quickly, and then people who are not here can then be removed. And indeed, the government has been doing precisely that.
Some people might say that's not a deterrent, in that you think, well, if you get here and actually you just get to stay here for quite a long time because no one's going to make a decision, actually maybe that's...
Well, no, but that's precisely
the problem. That's less of a deterrent than if you think, well, I might be out there pretty quick.
That is precisely the problem, because there was asylum chaos under the last government, where it was taking months on end and sometimes even longer. That's what the problem was. But this government already, over the summer, has been deporting people who have no right to be here. There's where the deterrent is. A quick system, and then people who then found to have no right to be here are removed.
Nadine?
So we need safer legal routes for those who are genuine refugees